Thorpe Park is one of the UK's most popular theme park destinations and has always branded itself as having the most thrilling rides in the country. And as much as I do absolutely love this place, I actually haven't visited Thorpe Park in over 10 years. But in 2024, the park has launched Hyperia, which is the tallest and fastest roller coaster in Britain. So it seemed like a pretty good time to go back, and there's no better time of year in my opinion to visit than Halloween. In this video I will give my honest review of visiting Thorpe Park for a full day during Fright Night in 2024. I'll discuss the new attractions and the changes they've made this year, what I enjoyed about Fright Night itself, and seeing as it's been so long, I'll give a full rundown of all the rides as well as my thoughts on the park as a whole. Please let me know what you think. If you agree or otherwise in the comments, give the video a like, share it and subscribe to the channel. So let's get into the review, starting off with what is new in 2024. And there's no other place to start than Hyperia, which is the new flagship roller coaster, the tallest and the fastest in the UK. And I have to say from the outset, it looks incredibly impressive when you're driving to and entering the park for the first time. Seriously, this thing looks like something that you would see in a Six Flags or some large American amusement park. I personally absolutely love the color scheme and the iconography. I am such a sucker for that sort of gold and bronze underneath and then the white up on the top. I think it looks fantastic, and it really does look like an incredibly intimidating structure. It's very compact actually, which really surprised me considering the size of it. I also really like the music as you're in the queue line, and even though it is a little bit generic, I'm a very big fan of the godlike theming. Now, the ride experience itself, the first thing I will say is that it is incredibly smooth. I especially love the restraints that they use in the trains. They are both very cozy and make you feel safe, but at the same time, you still feel very exposed. So when you're going up that very tall lift hill, you definitely do get that sense of intimidation. And then of course there are these unique elements, which also includes a world's first inversion, which when you see it for the first time in real life, I've never seen something like that before. And the ride experience of it itself, it is really interesting. It is incredible, the first drop. The second drop going into that unique inversion, I don't want to spoil it, but it is a really exhilarating experience. Now, there is a but, and that but is that I did want to love it more than I did. I want to say that on paper this is the best roller coaster in Thorpe Park, but when you are stood in a queue line and watch this thing break down and see people get stranded at the top and you're not sure if it's going to reopen, and then it's like a 2-hour wait, I think that that's always going to have an impact on the overall first impression that you get. And that is probably because I hyped it up so much in my head. I knew that this was the main reason that I wanted to come to Thorpe Park, but I honestly can say that when I'm reflecting on it, I am really desperate to go on it again. Maybe in Fright Night 2025, I can do so when the wait time is not over 2 hours, and maybe they've ironed out some of those kinks with the ride reliability, and I think that I will probably have a much better experience with it then. But this is all to say, by the way, it is still a fantastic roller coaster, and if you have the opportunity to go and ride it, clearly you definitely should. So the next big change is this area called Big Easy Boulevard, and this is just a new refurbished area where the Angry Birds land used to be, and for me, like, it's noticeably the best overall themed area of the park, and it also has the benefit of possessing this more unique art style. The obvious criticism here is that this area is still quite small. It's not massively different from what it used to be. I still would have just thought it's the same thing that it was 10 years ago, albeit they've given it a good paint job, and it still doesn't really connect very effectively with the Walking Dead or Ghost Train rides because the themes of those attractions have nothing to do with it and they just don't marry up very well. Next up, there have just been some ride refreshes in general, so this is only something that I found out after my visit. So I understand that in the off-season between 2023 and 2024, there was this initiative called Project Sparkle, where basically they went to an effort to refurbish and repaint various rides, attractions and areas, and I'd say they absolutely did do a really good job here, because this was noticeable to me. I was thinking, oh, this place looks, really well kept, despite the fact that it's been 10 years since I've been here, and a lot of these rides were built like 20 years ago. something like Stealth, for instance, it very clearly had a fresh coat of paint and looks really good and like it's been looked after. As part of this is the new logo and the branding. So Thorpe Park has enjoyed this overall rebrand as of 2024, and I personally really like it. Like, I feel like there are some retro vibes that throw back to the original park branding and the original color scheme. Everything, in my opinion, just looks a little bit cleaner. It's a more simple color palette and it's tidier, and it kind of drops that wacky, you know, mid 2000s feel of the original logo. So next up, I'm going to talk about the Fright Night experience overall. I have always been a sucker for Fright Night and the extended opening hours, riding in the dark and everything, and I think that it adds such a good vibe to any theme park experience. Thorpe Park has done a really great job of this in previous visits in the past, and once again here, I think that they've nailed it. I really enjoyed the switchover from normal theme park in the day to the Fright Night theme park. Everything just seems to be enhanced. There's better lighting, there's better music, there's a better atmosphere. The place seems to have more of a buzz, and more rides are open because there are certain rides that don't open until later on in the day, and everything was just a bit more immersive. Now on this occasion, we did not pay for the scare mazes, so I can't review them. I've done lots of Fright Night scare mazes in the past. I don't need to pay the extra amount to do probably a very similar thing again. I'm happy to be proven wrong. If someone in the comments wants to let me know, oh my god, no, you really missed out on an amazing scare maze that's totally unlike anything that's ever been done before, I will hold my hands up and accept that. Now, I have read up online that Stitches in particular is apparently really good, and that seems to be the one that people rate most as the best scare maze, and it was pretty evident as well to us that this is the one that clearly had the longest queue. Now, despite not doing any scare mazes, there is still overall spooky stuff going on, and as I've mentioned, I absolutely love the horror vibes of Thorpe Park in general. Most of its rides are kind of themed on horror or scary stuff anyway, and this just ramps up at night. All of this serves to elevate those existing scary attractions. So first of all, I want to talk about the Walking Dead ride. I really enjoyed this. Like, this completely exceeded any of my expectations. For those of you who aren't aware, this is a much better and engaging refurbishment of the original X:/No Way Out ride, which, you know, it used to be quite fun. I think it was like a fan favorite, but it was also really confusing, and let's be honest, it was a bit lame. And the Walking Dead reskin of this has completely fixed those issues from that original ride, whilst also introducing new elements in the queue line, as well as sort of a post-ride section as well. And the threat of there being live actors and scares within the pre and post ride sections was really intimidating and really creepy, and we thought that that elevated the experience even more, and I love that. I think it's really good, and I think the ride in general has also just been fixed and improved. It no longer has these weird janky back and forward sections. It's just a straight up pretty good in the dark roller coaster. Next up is Ghost Train, which I can't really describe without sort of laughing to myself. I'd never been on this ride or any of its previous iterations. First of all, the positives. From the outset, I really like the theming. Looking at it, I think the show building is very visually impressive. It all looks really cool, but unfortunately the actual ride experience itself, it left me wondering what the former attraction was like. You know, was this better? It probably doesn't help that the wait time for this was ridiculously long. Like, I think we waited at least an hour to go on this. If there's a very little wait, it's definitely worth giving it a go. If the queue time is massive, you can skip it. But now I'm going to get onto my overall impressions of Thorpe Park in 2024. Whereas most theme parks tend to follow that Disneyland hub and spoke model, Thorpe Park is just a bit jumbled with the rides being their own thing. And this is absolutely fine as long as you're not someone who's bothered by tight and cohesive environmental storytelling. But, you know, even just look at what it looks like when you walk in from the main entrance. It looks kind of barren. It doesn't look great. The problem is that the rides not having much of a thematic connection to each other, it just ends up looking kind of random. Like, you've got a Walking Dead attraction, and then immediately next to it there's this fun little slide that looks really child friendly and colourful. Now, I like the concept of the Lost City area. I think that's one of the more historic sort of legacy parts of the park, and it's where Colossus is, and it seems that that's really built around Colossus. But again, that's somewhat confused by the fact that you've then got Saw and Samurai that are very visibly around it, but they have nothing to do with it. A lot of that, it really comes down to how much you care and if you're bothered about that suspension of disbelief. Onto the thrill rides though, because Thorpe Park, it says it's the thrill capital of the UK. It's got Stealth, which was the first ride we went on, it's still absolutely awesome. It still might be my favorite, and it helps that we had zero wait time. Walked straight onto it. There is nothing else that gives you that sudden rush of the crazy fast acceleration, which now I think might be the quickest off the mark of any roller coaster in the world. Nearby, the Swarm is a really cool ride that I think is quite underrated, and it has such an obvious yet reasonably unique theme to it. Like, why has no one else themed a roller coaster after an alien invasion / apocalypse? It's a really cool idea, and I love how this ride interacts with its theming in a way that basically no other ride does, maybe except for Saw. It passes by some near misses. You know, you go through like some airplane wreckage and through this billboard, and then you ride through the station as well. And it's also an incredibly smooth experience. It looks really prominent, and yeah, I honestly think that this ride does not get as much appreciation as it maybe deserves. Now, it isn't the most exhilarating except for the initial drop, which by the way is really cool. But I still find it really enjoyable, and I really like the wing design and the freedom that you feel whilst you're riding. Nemesis Inferno is a classic. It is very much like a staple inverted roller coaster of its era. You know, look, it simply does not match the OG attraction in On Towers, but it is a very solid ride. Now, unfortunately, I cannot look at this ride without immediately being reminded of that horrible scene from The Inbetweeners. But that aside, the external theming of this roller coaster is great. It is very distinctive. It's kind of one of the only examples where you have like a landmark being used and that sort of forced perspective to give everything a sense of scale that's way bigger than it actually is. But the biggest letdown for me is that the volcano now just feels really lame inside. So I remember this having like lighting and smoke effects in previous years when you went through it, so you genuinely felt like you were going through a volcano. But on this visit, you were just riding through the inside of a shed. Colossus. Now, I actually forgot how good this ride is, and it might actually be my favorite of the original lineup. Again, probably helped because it had no queue, but riding it on this visit, I was really pleasantly surprised to find I actually enjoy it much more than I remembered. It was the only ride that we went on more than once. It had a very brief wait time, as I said, and overall, I think that the theming around this ride is much more mature and bedded in than anything else in the park. All the overgrowth, there's ivy everywhere, and because it's autumn, it's all multicolored. I really enjoy the Lost City theme overall in this part of the park, and Colossus, you know, going through its own little small valley underneath the bridge in the station area, the way that it interacts with the path. Yeah, it looks really awesome as the foreground to the other major roller coasters behind it. There is a place where you can basically see Colossus, Hyperia, Saw all together, and it looks really, really cool. Colossus is genuinely great, and it's much better than I've previously given it credit for. Now, Saw the ride. The films may no longer be that popular or in the zeitgeist so much, but this, I remember as a product of its time, the hype for this, oh my god, I went on it back in 2009 when it first opened. I think I waited for it for 3 hours. It was another really good example of where something can never be worth that long waiting for it. That being said, I have underrated the hell out of this ride. This does make me second guess my first impressions of Hyperia, by the way, because the wait time for this was not too bad. I think it was about half an hour waiting for it. And that was despite the fact that this is a super popular attraction on Fright Night because of the horror theme. We rode this in the dark as our last ride, and it was mwah, chef's kiss, absolutely perfect. The theming for Saw should be a slam dunk if done well, and this has always been the case. This is an intimidating looking ride. The sawmill building is creepy, the way that you can see trains go underneath those saws. The queue line feels violent, like you're trespassing somewhere that you shouldn't be. It's creepy, it's unsettling. I personally really hate the random shotgun noise that regularly goes off, but aside from that and the fact that I don't like loud noises without any pre-warning, the theming for this ride, it is excellent. The indoor section is so much better than I remember. The initial vertical lift hill, again, I don't remember it feeling as intimidating as it did. Yeah, I just don't think at the time I appreciate it for what it actually is, and it's really damn good. Like, riding it again with less wait time, without any technical issues either, now that it's a much more mature attraction, with the area around it being more bedded in and overgrown and feeling a bit more cohesive. And I'm really happy to say that I've definitely underrated this in the past, or perhaps it's just genuinely improved over time. Saw is a good ride, and it's a really, really good ride at Fright Night in the dark. So in addition to the main roller coasters, there are some thrill rides and flat rides, and Thorpe Park actually boasts, in my opinion, some of the best in the country. Vortex, for example, is and always has been fantastic. It's got a deceptively long wait time for a reason, because it's really great fun. Unfortunately, in my older age now, it did make me feel a bit queasy, but honestly, it's such a great little ride. And on a similar note, I've always loved Rush. I've got a real soft spot for Rush. It's a really simple ride. It's essentially just a big swing. I just wish there were more of these in other theme parks. It's really good fun. It's got such a minimalist restraint design as well, so you genuinely feel really exposed as you're being flung in the air like it's not safe, but at the same time, you know that you're safe and you're quite cozy. And I think that Rush might actually just low-key be my favourite ride in the whole park. Tidal Wave is a bit of a joke because of how trash the UK weather is at this time of year, but we loved going on it anyway, and this is probably the most drenching water ride that I've ever been on. Like, you get seriously so ridiculously wet on this compared to basically any other similar ride in other theme parks. I imagine it's probably very refreshing on a hot summer's day, but obviously in mid to late October, getting completely soaked wasn't that ideal. Samurai is another low-key sleeper hit. It's really fun, which sadly I just can't enjoy to the same extent that I once could. I just wish that I didn't get like nausea from rides like this, because in the dark, it was really funny. It just felt like the ride operator was messing with us, like they wouldn't end it. We were on it for ages. The guy next to me was like laughing, saying, "Why are we still on this?" because it just seemed to last forever. And I love that it uses the Matrix soundtrack as well. Like, no other ride in the theme park uses licensed music except for this one. And finally, I'm not personally a huge fan of Detonator, but I absolutely do get the appeal, and I can see why plenty of people rate it. So in the decade since I visited Thorpe Park, not too much has changed massively in terms of, like the layout of the theme park, but there have been subtle improvements that have been made to the guest experience. And one massive upgrade is the anonymous reporting feature that you can use via the app or by scanning a QR code in a queue line. So this empowers you to report other guest behavior, such as queue jumping, anonymously, so the park can take action against those guests. And reading up on this, it does seem to have been quite impactful, and we never had to deal with any awkward issues with other guests during our visit. And it's really positive that they've introduced this feature to mitigate against it. In addition, there were some water refill stations, as in dedicated ones, that I really appreciate, as well as free sunscreen stations that you could use as well. And these are just great examples of good quality of life improvements to make your overall guest experience that little bit better. Next up, the security at Thorpe Park since I've last been has seriously ramped up. When you arrive at Thorpe Park, there is a considerable bag search. You go through 2 metal detectors. It's basically like going through airport security, and they don't just casually look through and barely check. They actually check thoroughly. There are also security officers regularly walking around the theme park. The robust security is very present, it is very reassuring, but it does leave you wondering why it has to be there. The Thorpe Park app is really good. So theme parks nowadays, they all have their own variations of apps where there's a map functionality and it tells you queue line times, etc. And I would say that this one is really, really good. The map in particular is fantastic. The navigation system actually works really well with your GPS, and it uses a 3D map that's really easy to follow without any glitchiness or jankiness. Unfortunately, the information that's provided in the app cannot always be relied on. And this is because ride information is not always up to date. And furthermore, the app is also let down by the broader issue of wait times being hilariously inaccurate, to the point that you may as well just ignore them. I'll get onto that in a moment. Because next up, in terms of things that are not so great, there is a serious issue in this place with ride reliability. Rides just periodically break down throughout the day, seemingly one after another. It is as if the power is just being lost throughout the theme park over the course of the day. It even comes across as though rides are purposefully being closed on some sort of rotor to save energy. Honestly, it's really weird. Like, it wasn't bad enough to ruin the day because rides were just closed for a bit and then they'd reopen. Now, what may ruin your day, genuinely, if you're visiting for the purpose of riding this, is the reliability of Hyperia. And personally, I actually know of people who missed out on it because on the day it broke down and it never reopened. So it's not great if you are planning a trip to Thorpe Park specifically to ride it. And hopefully over time, this happens with every new attraction. They'll figure it out. It will become a lot more reliable. Next up, so I kind of alluded to this already, there are some weird, wacky, inaccurate queue times going on. It may seem like a small gripe, but it is genuinely really hard to plan your day when the queue times are so unreliable. Okay, so Overall value for money. On face value, and I do mean this sincerely, the cost of admission to Thorpe Park, especially for a Fright Night event, is really good value for money. Our tickets cost £37 per person for a full day in a theme park from 10 a.m. through to 9 p.m. So that's, 11 hours. Obviously with all the usual rides included. However, the counter to this is that the Fright Night extras, such as the scare mazes, cost extra, as I've already explained. Now the other caveat is of course fast track. In of itself, it adds a lot to the cost of your day. So assuming you bought a Fright Night ticket with the scare mazes as well as the fast passes, depending on the type of fast pass access that you have bought, the cost massively balloons. However, we just bought normal Fright Night tickets and we got on every ride that we wanted to. We got on Hyperia. We had a fantastic day. It was so much fun. We loved it. We had a really good day. And for what we paid, that was brilliant value for money. So to conclude this whole video review, as I say, it has been a good number of years since I last visited Thorpe Park, and it's still got really good rides which I've obviously underrated because I actually enjoyed them way more than I used to, and I really enjoyed going back and experiencing them. I personally have my own sort of thoughts about the overall theming and the storytelling of the park, but if you don't care about theming, you're not even going to notice it and you're still going to have a brilliant time. When it gets dark and they turn all the neon lights on and they play the spooky synth music, yeah, I'm so on board for this. And that is my video review of Thorpe Park Fright Night 2024. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please leave me a comment. Let me know if you've been this year, if you're planning on going, what your thoughts are, if you agree, if you disagree with anything that I've said. And of course, please subscribe to my channel to see more videos like this. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.